Tales for Little Children. Frog Prince, Grimm's Fairy Tales. Once upon a time, there was an emperor who had many daughters, all of them as beautiful as fairies. But the youngest was so lovely that even the sun, which had seen so many wondrous things, would pause to gaze at her in admiration. Not far from the imperial palace, there stretched a deep and shadowy forest. In its midst, beneath the shade of an ancient linden tree, there was a well. On particularly hot days, the emperor's youngest daughter would retreat to the forest and sit by the cool edges of the well. She would sit there idly, and when boredom struck, she would take a golden ball from her pocket. She tossed it into the air, caught it in her palms, and threw it up again. This simple game brought her the greatest joy. But one day, the ball slipped from her hands. It fell to the ground and rolled straight into the well. The princess watched it go, her eyes following it until it disappeared into the depths. The well was so deep that she couldn't see the bottom. Overcome with grief, she began to cry bitterly and could not be consoled. As she wept, she heard a voice nearby. "Why are you crying so hard, princess? Your tears could soften even stones." Startled, the princess looked around and saw a frog. It had just poked its wide, warty head out of the water and was staring at her with large, bulging eyes. "Ah, so it's you, old frog," she exclaimed. "I'm crying because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Dry your tears and stop crying," said the frog kindly. "I can help you. But tell me, what will you give me if I fetch your ball from the water?" "Anything you wish, dear frog," replied the princess. "My dresses, my jewels, my pearls, even the golden crown I wear on my head." The frog thought for a moment and said, "I do not want your dresses, your jewels, your pearls, or your golden crown. But if you promise to love me, to let me be your friend and playmate, to sit beside you at your table, to eat from your golden plate, to drink from your cup, and to sleep in your little bed, if you promise me all that, I will dive into the well and fetch your ball." I promise you anything you want," the princess said quickly. But in her heart, she thought, "What nonsense this silly frog is talking. He belongs in the water with his kind, croaking endlessly. How could a creature like him be friends with a human?" As soon as she made her promise, the frog plunged into the well. In no time he resurfaced with the golden ball in his mouth and tossed it onto the grass. The princess was overjoyed to see her beloved toy again. She picked it up and without even a word of thanks, ran off. Wait, don't run away," called the frog. "Take me with you. I can't move as fast as you." But his croaks fell on deaf ears. The princess ran faster and faster, forgetting the poor frog entirely. Left behind, he had no choice but to return to the well. The next day, the princess had just sat down to dine with her father, the emperor, and the courtiers, when she heard a strange sound on the marble staircase outside. Plop, 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 plop. Then came a knock at the door, followed by a voice calling, "Youngest princess, open the door. Remember your promise from the night before at the well when I helped you. Now it's time to follow through." The princess ran to the door to see who it was. When she opened it slightly, she saw the frog staring up at her. Frightened, she quickly slammed the door shut and hurried back to the table, her heart pounding. The emperor noticed her distress and asked, "Why are you so frightened, my child? Did you see a dragon at the door, come to carry you away?" "No, father," she replied reluctantly. "It's just a big, warty frog." "A frog? And what does it want from you?" "I'm ashamed to tell you, father. Yesterday, I was playing by the well in the forest when my golden ball fell into the water. I cried so much that a frog came out and promised to retrieve it for me if I made him a promise. He insisted I promise to be his friend, to let him sit by me at the table, and even sleep in my bed. I agreed, thinking he could never leave the water. But now he's here, demanding I keep my word. The frog continued knocking and croaking. Open the door, youngest princess. Remember your promise when I helped you yesterday down by the well. Hearing this, the emperor said firmly, If you made a promise, you must keep it. Go and let him in. Reluctantly, the princess obeyed. The frog hopped into the palace and followed her all the way to her chair. When she sat down, he said, Lift me up to sit beside you. She hesitated, but her father ordered her to do as the frog wished. Once he was on the chair, the frog said, Put me on the table now, closer to your plate. Though she found it disgusting, the princess did as she was told. The frog ate heartily from her golden plate, but she could barely touch her food. When the meal was over, the frog said, I'm tired. Take me to your room and prepare your silken bed so I can sleep in comfort. The princess burst into tears. She couldn't bear the thought of touching the cold, slimy creature, let alone sharing her bed with it. But the emperor, angry at her ingratitude, said, When you needed help, you didn't hesitate to accept it. Now that it's time to repay the favor, you're unwilling? That is not right. With no other choice, the princess picked up the frog with 2 fingers and carried him upstairs. Disgusted, she threw him into a corner of her room. But when she tried to lie down, the frog hopped to her bed and said, I'm tired too. Let me up, or I'll tell your father. Angered by his threats, the princess grabbed him and hurled him against the wall, shouting, Take that, you wretched frog. Now you'll leave me in peace. But as soon as he hit the wall, the frog transformed into a handsome prince, his eyes kind and filled with charm. He explained that he had been cursed by a wicked witch and that only her actions could have freed him. The emperor gave his blessing for the prince to marry his daughter. The next day, a golden carriage drawn by 8 white horses arrived to take them to the prince's kingdom. In the back of the carriage stood Heinrich, the prince's loyal servant, who had been so heartbroken by his master's curse that he had bound his own heart with iron bands to keep it from breaking. As they traveled, the prince heard a loud crack behind him. Thinking the carriage was breaking, he called out, Heinrich, the carriage is cracking. No, my lord, Heinrich replied. It is not the carriage. It is one of the bands around my heart, which has broken from joy at seeing you free. 2 more cracks followed as the remaining bands broke, and Heinrich rejoiced in his master's happiness. The prince and princess lived happily ever after. The end. You have listened to the story written by the brothers Grimm, The Frog Prince. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more stories that changed our world.